make a good point that I want to make sure we intentionally transition into, and talking about like that pleasure aspect, because you know, in all of our pre-calls, basically, you've all mentioned how there is an intense focus, and rightfully so, on pleasure coming through our dick. But we all know that's not just where pleasure can be experienced. So how do we get to a place where, in this conversation, but in generally speaking, how we can start being really open and about like the totality of what Black men can feel in our bodies, and like that, the potential of what pleasure can feel like, and in talking about pleasure and talking about experimentation sexually, what do y'all think needs to happen? Is it conversations? Is it like, you know, organizations? Like what is, because I think there's so much about, and rightfully so, like I'm somebody who, yeah, when I have sex, my dick feels amazing, but
what about the rest of me?
What about the rest of me?
Yeah.
So how do you convince somebody that that amazing sex that they're having, that amazing feeling they're getting through their penis is great, but there's a next level? Because that first level feels pretty damn good. So how do you get somebody to say, hey, you could tell your partner you liked for your, you know, balls to be licked. You like for your, you know, ass to be touched, to be licked, to be whatever. How do we get folks to actually start thinking about that? Because so much focus is on what already feels good, and as if that's not enough. I think that's a really interesting piece I'm curious for all y'all's opinion on.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is it has to start at a young age, and in a very like controlled environment. And by controlled, I mean like an environment where folks are actually like maybe in a classroom setting or something where they can explore and ask those questions. I always will talk about sex ed because sex ed is so important, and it's something that all of us have either missed or just gotten poorly at a young age. When we talk about sex, like inclusive sex ed or comprehensive sex ed, and this is not like an educational moment, but I guess it is, like we're talking about a range of things, right? It's not just like, again, like this is good sex, this is bad sex, which that should be a part of it too. It's about healthy dating and consent. It's about like what it actually means to not assume someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. It's about like talking about sexual assault. It's actually discussing pregnancy and parenting and abortion. And there also includes abstinence as well, right? But another thing that it really includes and should include is pleasure. Pleasure should be a core component of what we're talking to young people about in sex ed. Because if you don't talk about pleasure, then many young people, unfortunately, don't know that they've gotten the opposite. And for some, so that means they're experiencing like assault. That means they're experiencing trauma, and they don't even know how to articulate it that way. And so, you know, the reason why I'm so passionate about sex ed is because I've just seen it shift people's life, because it's over the life course, right? There are so many adults that are having terrible sex because they never explored their own bodies like at a young age, and they still don't, right? I mean, if they did, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So I think that's part of it. We need to be comfortable with talking to young people about sex, and that's medically accurate, that's age appropriate, and that's rooted in informed consent, because it allows them to make the decisions for their own lives. So that's one. The second part of the thing that I always want to discuss with sex is y'all got to talk to yourselves sometimes, because the truth is
that's real.
And we have to start like this internal dialogue with why it is that we're so afraid of actually like our own asses, right? And this is not just a straight like conversation, right? When I started having sex, I remember, so I started having sex with women, which, wow, it's something that I think about. And after I experimented and explored and realized that I loved men and dick, frankly, the one thing that really started coming to my head is I was like, I never allowed someone to actually like play with and around my ass, right? Because the way, even with me exploring what queerness meant for me, the way I was still talking about it to friends was basically like, you give dick. That is still what it is. And it took a while for me to actually explore that's actually not just what sex is. And I think for me to only like experiment in sex in one way and to be queer, I think, first of all, I think they're diametrically opposed. Yeah. But also, I think that's really limiting all the joys and freedom and liberation of what it means to be a queer Black man. But when I do have these conversations with people around like their fear of having someone, maybe they wouldn't use the word fear, but their reticence with having someone touch their ass, it's always like either like, I'm not that type of gay, or where straight man is, I'm not gay, right? And it's so for many people, it just reduces this act to your ass just equaling being gay, or not just gay, feminine, right?
And that's like a gateway. It's like, oh,
right, exactly.
I've heard straight women say it. I've heard like straight men say it. It's like, oh, so-and-so like their ass to be touched. It's a gateway. It's 6 more months, he's going to be gay. It's like...
all the time.
That's how that works.
It's that man's body.
Right, exactly.
Like,
and he should be able to explore what that means for him.
Yeah.
And so I think there's obviously a deeper societal conversation that's related to why can't men explore our own bodies and what that actually means. And I really do recognize that there's a distinction in how people are comfortable having this conversation or not.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine a straight black man commenting something like that on social media and people rushing to his defense. Maybe some people will, right? But I think largely it'd be a joke. It'd be on all the Instagram stories. Like Tariq Nasheed would have a field day. Like all these people would just run into attack, right? When that's exploration, when that's talking about something that they are vulnerable about and want to be transparent, because we know many people are having these conversations. They're just having it in a way that's not filmed.
And I mean, with the internet now, if you go into some of the deep, dark places on the internet, there are black men who may be anonymous talking about this shit.
Yes.
So it's on the anonymous places, but it's not necessarily in the public venue. So it's
for sure,
people are having sex however they want it, but publicly, like you said, there's still I'm not going to say that because da-da-da-da. Yeah. We talked about, you might have mentioned this last year, but with Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade, I think she joked about pleasuring Dwayne, his ass, and niggas just oh, see Dwayne, here we go again.
Exactly.
And it's just even when there is that public sharing of a straight cisgender black man or his partner talking about it in that way, it's still yeah, they a little different though. Dwayne, D-Wade cool, but that shit's still some gay shit at the end of the day.
Can I just say, and the last thing I'll say is, I appreciate you re-raising it actually, because also the last thing is people really need to understand the difference between sexual orientation and sex and sexuality.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people, and I know when I'm usually in a room, I'm usually in the minority in this, but to be clear, I deeply believe that a man can have sex with another man and still be straight. Right? Because I think there's a distinction between someone's sexual orientation and who they choose to have sex with, right? Sexual orientation is not just limited, right? It's about attraction, just broadly, right? I'm attracted to women. I don't want to have sex with women, right? Those are not, right? I knew I was gay before I ever had sex with a man, right? And I didn't have the language at the time to understand what that meant. But I think people just need to understand that and be willing to explore that. Again, people need to be provided the safe space to explore that as well.
And not look at it from such a yes, no, black, white, binary,
Right, exactly.
You did this, therefore you are that. And it's we are human beings. There's so much more than just if you did have sex with a man, that just means you had sex with a man. That doesn't mean, oh, you gay, bro. It just means that's what you did and that's what you tried.
You explored.
And one thing that I've been coming back to when it comes to sex and pleasure is just a simple question for myself personally. Does it feel good?
Yeah,
That's right.
Does it feel good? Does it feel good? Yes.
Does it feel
Does
good?
it feel good? No.
No. Mm-hmm.
And if it feels good, it's because it's supposed to feel good.
Yeah.
Your body is made in that way for pleasure to be accessed.